almost sounds like there's an interfering.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good afternoon. This is Bernard Powers of the International African American Museum, welcoming you to Black History Talks on 96.3 FM home radio in Charleston. And our regular listeners know that this is our half-an-hour program in which we talk about a variety of things that are related to Black history. But before we get into the details of what we're going to do today, let me just remind you about the museum, which is today being outfitted on the banks of the Cooper River in the vicinity of the City Maritime Center. And let me also remind you that the museum is going to be open to the public June the 27th. So really right around the corner. And we hope that, in fact, we know that you'll be very interested in visiting, and we are interested in welcoming you to the new museum. So please continue to go to the website, the museum website, which is iaamuseum.org, iaamuseum.org, to find out about all the latest developments, how you can get tickets for the opening and the events surrounding the opening. And on this program, we'll have a variety of individuals and representatives of organizations that are doing work in the area of African American history. And we know that you are interested in the kind of work that they're doing, the contributions that they're making, and the possible connections that they may have to the International African American Museum. And it's our pleasure to really profile them and highlight the kind of work that they're doing on this program regularly. And finally, let me remind you of the title for the program, Black History Talks, which really does have kind of a double meaning. And obviously, we're going to be talking about Black history here. But secondly, we hope that the subject will talk to you, will speak to you with a clarion voice, which demonstrates its importance for all of us. And so with that as our background, let me tell you that, again, we are very fortunate to have a special guest today, a personal friend that I've known for some decades now, and his name is Damon Fordham. A number of you all may be familiar with Damon Fordham already. He is an adjunct professor of history at the Citadel. He is a City of Charleston tour guide, and he is also a prolific author. So, Damon Fordham, welcome this morning to Black History Talks. We're so glad to have you.
Well, I'm honored. As a matter of fact, he was on my graduate committee that signed my master's degree. I also have to add that little plug in for him. So, when he was teaching at the College of Charleston.
Yes. That's right. And I am awfully glad that you kind of passed through my hands, so to speak, over there. Well, listen, Damon. Just for those people in the audience who don't know you, just provide us with some information. Provide the audience with some information about your background and who you are, just so that they have a better sense of who you are as a person.
Okay, I was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina, was adopted, raised here in the Charleston area, out and over in Mount Pleasant. I grew up surrounded by adults who were into storytelling and in their own way history, and so to me that was as much fun as Batman and Bruce Lee, so I adapted into all of that.
Sure.
And I also was a voracious reader since almost day one. So all of these things combined to where Dean Willie Harford at the University of South Carolina led me into this path where I could make a living from all of this.
Yeah.
So between that and my parents' stories and their guidance and so forth, I'm now a well-respected historian. As you mentioned, I've written several books. I have a YouTube channel called The American Storyteller, as well as doing the tours. I speak a lot, pretty much all over the country, as well as in West Africa, among other places, because my thing is taking this type of information out to the general public, who I feel is in great need of this more than most people.
Sure. Exactly. So now, as a youngster growing up, you mentioned that your parents and grandparents told a lot of stories and
Yes.
so on. Did they tell you stories about African American history and African American heroes, or what were those stories about?
My dad was very much into that because I found through his journal that in 1943 he heard Dr. Carter G. Woodson when he was at South Carolina State right before he went off to serve in World War II.
Sure.
And he had read The Story of the Negro. So he would tell me about growing up listening to Joe Louis and Jackie Robinson on the radio, as well as various musical personalities and such. And that was also the days when Ebony Magazine did a lot of stories through Rowan Bennett, who I'm sure you probably met before.
Sure.
I remember being inspired by his stories on Marcus Garvey and Jack Johnson, folks like that. And older people in general just told me things that I just found so fascinating. So between listening to them and reading those stories, that's how I got into this.
Sure. Well, now, okay, so you teach history over at the Citadel.
Correct.
So what courses do you teach there?
There's one called Leadership Development that's based on mostly the Constitution and issues surrounding that. I've taught African American history as well as world history and U.S. history, because under the program that you were over at the College of Charleston, we had to be pretty well-rounded in both Asia, South America, Africa, and history, world history in general. So when we got out of there, we were pretty much qualified to teach anything as far as history goes. So that helped me a lot over the years.
So as we both know, the Citadel as an institution has a very interesting and important history.
Yes.
And so a couple of questions related to that. So when you're teaching African American history, and I know you talk about the origins of the Citadel.
The Denmark-Vesey Rebellion.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, the Citadel was built originally as a fortress to put down future slave rebellions in Charleston after the Denmark-Vesey Rebellion was quashed. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. And when the students at the Citadel find out about that, how do they react? What did they think?
In a word, shock. Because I'm here to tell you that 9 out of 10 students that I've dealt with have never heard of, over there that is, have never heard of the Denmark-Vesey Rebellion or its role in how the Citadel started.
Yeah. And that's so unfortunate, given the significance for Vesey in the city of Charleston, but also for the nation at large also. So it is important that you are there to impart that very significant information.
Well, Dr. Felice Knight, who also passed through your guidance at College of Charleston, she's there doing pretty much the same type of thing also.
Yes.
But this is why historians at this juncture in American history are of an extreme importance, because as you know, there are these events to censor this type of history around the country.
Sure.
But it's nothing new, because we had this issue back a century ago, and the Daughters of the Confederacy edited these things out of the school books used in the South and elsewhere in favor of one of history that was in favor of the Confederacy. And most people only know what they are told.
Yes.
There's a relative few of us who go the extra mile and do real research. Those of us who understand that Google alone is not research.
Yes.
You see,
That's
so
right.
this is why we have a responsibility to take these things out to the public.
Absolutely. Speaking of taking the information out to the public, you certainly are involved in delivering history in a non-traditional way outside of the traditional classroom. Because as I mentioned earlier, that one of the hats that you wear is as a Charleston tour guide. So tell us about the tours that you offer and just kind of describe them to us.
Well, that came out as somewhat of a blessing in disguise because, as you know, I was my mother's caretaker for many years, which was why I never went on to get my PhD because that was impossible at the time. When she passed, I made an attempt to try to get into a PhD program, but to make a long story short, that fell through. So I kind of did as Booker T. Washington said in Up From Slavery, cast down my bucket where I was.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And I took a tour guide exam and I passed it, and it's called The Lost Stories of Black Charleston. You can do it through Buxton Books, and sometimes I can be booked aside from that for times outside of that. And what I do is I don't tell the same stories that everyone else tells. I do hard research into things that most people don't already know. Like, for example, in your book, Black Charlestonians, you tell the story of Scipio Frazier and his rebellion of 1866. I don't think you can count on your hands the number of people who know stories of that kind. So I just basically, as the great saxophone player Junior Walker once says, hit 'em where it hit.
Yeah.
See, so
that's right.
So I make sure to find these little known stories through primary sources, old newspapers and the like, as well as books such as your secondary sources like your books, so that I can use this material to tell these people these things that they don't already know and that often go against the traditional narrative.
Yeah.
So make them think.
Sure. Exactly. So now, I have known you for a long time, and I know that you like to do things in a different way. You like to deliver the information.
Yes.
In a different way.
I'm very animated.
Yes. Okay. So just talk to us about your delivery, your mode of providing this information, because I know you're not just standing there deciding one fact after another.
Because that bores people.
Sure.
And they don't want to hear that. But see, my father was extremely animated as a storyteller when I was a boy, you see, as was a lot of the other elders when I was growing up. They really, they acted out roles whenever they told you something. They just give you try to deliver.
Yeah.
And I also remember when I was a boy, and I'm sure you probably remember this, I remember vividly seeing Flip Wilson on Ed Sullivan do the routine about Christopher Columbus.
I actually don't remember that.
Okay, well, that's the one where he talks about Chris gonna find Ray Charles when he got to America.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I figured that would jog your memory.
Yeah.
But the way he told that story and the way he did these characters and all of that while telling the story, his version about the Christopher Columbus story.
Yes.
As a boy, that planted a seed in my mind because it immediately caught my attention. This is what my dad and the other elders around me are doing when they tell stories. So then when I learned about the griots in Africa and how the storytellers there do the same thing, and last summer I got a chance with a young man named Lamine who was over in Gambia, who was basically the griot of the Jupere era, and so forth, as well as others over there. It just really touched my heart that they were doing the same kind of things. This is how they traditionally got information across to people.
Yeah.
So it made me see that I'm on the right track. So whenever some people, when they see me doing that, they're like, oh, you're skinning and grinning for the white folks and all this nonsense. I tell them, look, read and know your history. This is the oldest way that people of African descent has passed that information down. So either do your research or close your mouth.
Yeah. That's right. And listen, you are somewhat of a musician, aren't you? Also, don't you play a musical instrument? Something?
Actually, several. I played the saxophone in high school.
Okay.
I played the harmonica from age 12 up until the pandemic when I got bored with it, and now I play the melodica. which is a kind of keyboard harmonica.
Yeah.
It's kind of a step up from the harmonica.
Yeah.
And it's not as high maintenance as the saxophone. And it doesn't require as much wind.
Yeah.
So it fits because I saw a YouTube video of Augustus Pablo, who was a reggae artist who plays that. And I said, hey, this sounds great. And so I just sort of practiced during the pandemic, and when it was done, I was able to play in public, and there it was.
All right. So that becomes another point of distinction.
Yes, I play spirituals and things like that relate to what I'm talking about. So I tie in both the animated storytelling, the research, and these musical interludes and all of that. All of that comes together to bring it about in a way that's both dignified and interesting at the very same time. Mm-hmm. Because the main thing is you got to keep people's interest in the stuff. This doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do somersaults and juggle at the same time or anything like that. But in a sense, it's a kind of homage to the old school storytellers as well as the African griot storytellers. What I'm doing, I see what I'm doing is kind of keeping up the tradition.
Yes, exactly. And I'm sure some of that delivery that you do in public as part of your public history tours, mm-hmm. that crosses over into your regular classroom.
Oh, yes, definitely. And then here's something else I have to add into that. When I was over there, I met a number of the Wolof people mm-hmm. in Senegal, right? And I met a young lady named Kaidiba at the museum who could pass for my niece. Mm-hmm. And our guide there introduced me, said, Professor, this is your Wolof sister. I'm like, whoa, she could pass for my family, right?
Yeah.
And so the Wolof people there in general kind of accepted me as one of their own.
Yeah.
Because of my features. They're so much like theirs. And then I found out that the Wolof was actually the griot tribe of Senegal. So I'm like, whoa, I get this thing naturally.
That's right.
So I'm truly paying homage when I do this kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, well, very good. And we'll talk some more about the African side mm-hmm. In a little while. But now, as a tour guide, mm-hmm. and Charleston's such a big center of tourism, and particularly history-related tourism, I would think that sometimes people come and take your tour, and they have these preconceived notions mm-hmm. that you have to disabuse them about. Just, if you would, just give us some examples.
Well, you have these people who just learned about racism after George Floyd.
Oh yeah, okay.
These people who read books like White Fragility
that
makes it look like black people are these porcelain dolls that have to be dealt with so much caution, that we're so fragile and all. They project that fragility nonsense on us, mm-hmm. and they come expecting trauma porn.
Yes.
Because I had people ask me if I had to step off the street for white people, mm-hmm. If my dad was a slave, things that are like, come on, know, these people don't obviously read books, and I just give them straight answers on that because I understand that these people just simply don't know these things, and they're not asking me these things out of malice. Right. They know about as much as us as black people as we know about the people of Jah, because it's not their experience. I get that, but by the time I'm done with them, they are set straight. And one of the things that I do is that, see, I'm very opposed to the victim narrative. Mm-hmm. Because as you know, I think that it disempowers us. Not only that, because a lot of us grow up with people who have been defeated in their experiences, and some, unfortunately, like Malcolm X said in his autobiography, little black children saw before they could talk that their parents considered themselves inferior. So then you have these people coming down expecting me to tell all these woe is me and gloom and doom stories. Now, granted, lynching and segregation and slavery are parts of history,
sure,
but so are the rebellions.
Yes.
Like I'm sure you know the story about Figaro's rebellion of 1797, as well as the Vesey Rebellion, as well as the Stono Rebellion, and we just talked about Scipio Frazier just now. I talk a lot about resistance and people who manage to endure in spite of these things. You see, it's because that tells the young people of today that what you're going through in comparison to what these folks went through is relatively mild. Not to, discount it, but it's relatively mild compared to what a lot of our ancestors went through. And if these people could persevere through what they went through, imagine what you could go through with what you're going through today, and it puts it in a wider perspective, because most people only know what they see and what they are told. So I see what I do as expanding that and planting those seeds in their mind of overcoming. You see, because so often, some of the stuff that I see out there now, you know good and well what I'm talking about. A lot of these books and a lot of these speakers right now, they're basically exploiting oppression in many ways by making it look like that's all there is to our history, because, and one of the most famous people who's doing that right now recently admitted in an interview that this person thinks that that's our way that we can get reparations. I don't think that that is a strategy that's going to get us, number one. And number two, you wind up basically disempowering people.
Yes.
That's backfiring, because all you're presenting is the woe is me story.
Yes. And I think you are, in fact, I'm certain that you are right. In my experience, you have to show that people demonstrated agency.
Oh, definitely. Yes, agency is a key thing, because I look at it like this. You don't want to put everything as if it's all sunny and light when it wasn't, because that makes people unable to deal with reality when it comes.
Yes.
But yet you don't want to put out that there was absolutely nothing but oppression, because that gives them no hope. Mm-hmm. And people with no hope will never attempt to make anything better, because they don't think it's possible.
Yes.
So you have to have these two things that are often missing from the discussion in our time: context and balance.
Yes.
And those are two of the things that I try to provide in what I do.
Yeah, terribly important. Mm-hmm. And the other aspect of this is, in general, and we've seen many surveys of this, Americans are terrible when it comes to understanding their own history.
Historically illiterate.
Yeah, historically illiterate.
Yeah, because it's been a low priority subject.
Yeah.
Because, back when I knew you grew up in Chicago, so I can't speak for Chicago. I've only been to Chicago once. But, down here, you had most history teachers were coaches.
Yes.
Who didn't major in it, and they just taught out of the book. And so that, of course, adds to historical illiteracy. And then right now, you have all these clowns on YouTube putting out all this misinformation that enriches themselves but deceives the public.
Sure.
All of which are very dangerous. So these are all the reasons why I do what I do. And why I also plant seeds in young people, so that when I'm gone from the scene inevitably, they'll continue this kind of thing on to help make things better for the next generation, and it continues like that.
Absolutely right. Well, listen, Damon, you've written a number of books, mm-hmm. and the latest one that was published last year is entitled "The 1895 Segregation Fight in South Carolina." So tell us about that book, because I think it fits directly into what we're discussing.
Oh yes, I'm speaking of it tonight at 6:00 at Buxton Books, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
It's free. You're welcome to come.
Okay.
And essentially, some years ago, I was reading a book called "Lift Every Voice" by Philip Foner, which compiled these speeches of Black Americans from the 1700s to 1901. Mm-hmm. And I came across Thomas Miller, the founding president of South Carolina State, making this powerful speech, "Call Us Citizens or Call Us Aliens," when he was defending the Black South Carolinians against Senator Benjamin Tillman's efforts to make segregation the laws of our state. When I read that, my jaw dropped, and I said, I got to find more about this. So I went to the Caroliniana Library up at the University of South Carolina, my undergrad alma mater, and I found where these 6 great Black leaders, the great Robert Smalls, William J. Whipper out of Beaufort, James Wig and Isaiah Reed, 2 Black lawyers out of Beaufort, and Thomas Miller, as well as Robert Anderson, a Black teacher out of Georgetown. They made these eloquent speeches at this session where they were about to disfranchise and segregate black South Carolinians. And they defended themselves so well that news reports around the world reported this. And Booker T. Washington, in fact, even spoke up to Tillman in their defense and all this. And knowing that when they passed the Jim Crow laws, that the black people didn't give up without a fight. That story is so inspiring. I said, other people have to know this. And it would probably empower them if they do. And I don't have to embellish it at all to make it empowering to people, you see. So that's my favorite story in American history. And so I put it in the book, and so far it's been very well received, and I'm very happy with it so far because it's doing what I intended.
Yes. And again, showing agency, showing initiative.
That's right.
And, when one talks about challenging Ben Tillman.
Yes, who was the master of segregation in South Carolina. He was the architect of it. But it also is a warning for our own time against when you deal with leaders like Tillman who abuse the emotions of their followers and lead them in the wrong direction. I look at this book as a direct warning, and how Jorge Santillana once said, those who don't remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Absolutely. And Ben Tillman was a man who, my recollection, gave a speech in the well of the Senate justifying and rationalizing the lynching of black men.
Right, and he basically exploited the fact that nobody else really cared about the poor whites, and he gave them a sort of pseudo-empowerment, and because of this, they would literally follow this man to hell. And any resemblance between that and certain incidences of our own time, I don't think they're a coincidence. Which is why this stuff is necessary.
Yes. That's right. So the knowledge of this kind of history can help prevent people from being taken advantage of.
Exactly. So this is why we have to put this message out.
Sure. Absolutely. Just as we prepare to wrap up, you talked about making a trip to Africa.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about the impact that trip had on your teaching. Let's talk about the way it affected your teaching.
One thing I have to say about that is that I've talked a little bit about what happened during it, but you cannot possibly read about Africa and teach about it with any effectiveness, which is the reason for the trip, you see, because as you know, Africa is so multi-layered, so complex that you have to go there and experience it to discuss it with any type of reality to people. Because even people who I consider educated were shocked when I showed them pictures of the modern city of Dakar in Senegal. And they really believe that just everybody lives that jungle lifestyle. Well, the truth of the matter is it's layered. You have some people who live out in the wilderness and all of that, but you also have advanced cities. You will have poverty, but you also have wealth also. You have advanced universities like the University of Dakar and the West African Cultural Center and the Black Civilizations Museum and all of that. And when you go to a place like that and see a majority of black population in these type of settings, it's really a psychological shock to, if you're a black American used to seeing black Americans in a minority, seeing them in a majority in a progressive city like that is really a very positive shock to the system. And that's one of the things that I try to get across to people is that there is far more than this situation than what you see in front of you and what you hear.
That's right. Well, listen, Damon Fordham, it has been wonderful to have you on the program today, and we look forward to welcoming you on the next opportunity to find out what's going on in terms of your teaching, upcoming publications.
Oh yes, I'm working on I'm working on an anthology of Black South Carolina's Black folklore, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
So we'll talk about that on another occasion.
Yes. So thank you very much. This has been Black History Talks, and our guest today has been Mr. Damon Fordham, adjunct professor at the Citadel, author, and local tour guide. We thank our audience for tuning in to Home Radio, Charleston's only community-supported radio station. And if you would like to support commercial-free radio programs of the kind that you have heard this afternoon, please go to Home Radio at ohmradio963.org. That's ohmradio963.org, and make a contribution. Thank you for listening today.
You're most welcome.